Commercial law, trust law, taxation, and securities enforcement in mortgage and administrative proceedings Part 1 of 15. 1. Introduction to interrelated legal domains. A comprehensive understanding of commercial law, trust law, tax law, and accounting principles is fundamental to navigating legal disputes, particularly in matters involving mortgage transactions and judicial or non-judicial foreclosure proceedings. Each of these domains intersects at the transactional level, forming the basis of enforceable agreements and remedies. Misunderstanding jurisdictional scope and failing to challenge presumptive authority results in contractual adhesion and judicial submission, often without informed consent. Footnote: This section introduces the necessity of integrating commercial, trust, and tax law to comprehend contractual jurisdiction and avoid procedural default in foreclosure defense. Commercial law, trust law, taxation, and securities enforcement in mortgage and administrative proceedings Part 2 of 15. 2. Jurisdictional strategy, special appearances and contractual avoidance. Many litigants unknowingly contract with courts by making general appearances, thereby conferring jurisdiction. Courts operate in bifurcated roles, a public side under commercial code and a private side under common law. Properly executed special appearances and use of instruments such as letters rogatory, conditional acceptance upon proof of claim, and specific references to statutory authorities, e.g., 28 U.S.C. Section 13501-202, are essential to maintaining jurisdictional integrity. Footnote: This section emphasizes jurisdictional awareness, outlining the use of procedural tools like special appearances to prevent unintended contracts with the court. Commercial law, trust law, taxation, and securities enforcement in mortgage and administrative proceedings Part 3 of 15. 3. Non-judicial foreclosures and confessed judgments in deeds of trust. Non-judicial foreclosure is typically initiated via a confessed judgment embedded within the deed of trust. Such confessions, often hidden within the power of sale clauses, lack the requisite judicial oversight and are governed by specific civil codes, e.g., California Civil Code Section 1131, Section 1134. These clauses often violate procedural due process unless the borrower explicitly waives rights through notarized consent. Footnote: This section explains how power of sale clauses within deeds of trust often function as unlawful confessed judgments unless properly executed. Commercial law, trust law, taxation, and securities enforcement in mortgage and administrative proceedings Part 4 of 15.4. Investment contracts and the statute of frauds. Mortgage loans are frequently misrepresented as bilateral loan agreements when in fact they are investment contracts governed by pooling and servicing agreements, PSAs. Under the statute of frauds, Cal. Civ. Code Section 1624, UCC Section 2201, enforceability requires written memorialization and consent. Failure to object to unauthorized representations renders borrowers liable by default, despite lacking contractual privity. Footnote: This section highlights the mischaracterization of mortgage loans and the enforceability limits imposed by the statute of frauds. Commercial law, trust law, taxation, and securities enforcement in mortgage and administrative proceedings Part 5 of 15. 5. Security classification of promissory notes and misuse of Article 3. Mortgage notes with maturities exceeding 9 months meet the definition of securities under 15 U.S.C. Section 78 C 10, and are thus governed by Article 8 rather than Article 3 of the UCC. Adjustable rate riders alter repayment terms and render such notes non-negotiable per UCC Section 3 to 106D. Consequently, enforcement under negotiable instrument statutes is improper. Footnote: This section clarifies why most mortgage notes are securities governed by Article 8, invalidating attempts to enforce them as negotiable instruments under Article 3. Commercial law, trust law, taxation, and securities enforcement in mortgage and administrative proceedings Part 6 of 15. 6. Claims, defenses, and counterclaims under UCC Articles 3 and 8. Under UCC Section 3 to 305 and Rule 13 of the FRCP, borrowers may assert mandatory counterclaims as recoupment defenses. Additionally, UCC Section 3 to 306 recognizes proprietary and possessory rights in a note and its proceeds. The failure to assert such claims allows plaintiffs to obtain default judgments and administratively cancel competing equitable interests via 1099-A filings. Footnote: this section outlines the statutory basis for recoupment and counterclaim strategies to challenge foreclosure and preserve equitable title. Commercial law, trust law, taxation, and securities enforcement in mortgage and administrative proceedings Part 7 of 15. 7. Article 8 Adverse claims and enforcement mechanisms. Article 8 of the UCC defines and enables adverse claims to financial assets. UCC Section 8 to 102(1) and IRS 8 to 105 establish a party's right to notice and enforcement of such claims. The process for asserting these claims is detailed in UCC Section 8 to 505 through Section 8 to 508. Failure to assert ownership or rescission rights allows servicers to foreclose using undisclosed third-party beneficiary theories. Footnote: this section elaborates on the mechanics and legal authority to file adverse claims under Article 8 to contest improper securitization and asset transfers. Commercial law, trust law, taxation, and securities enforcement in mortgage and administrative proceedings Part 8 of 15. 8. Regulatory rescission rights under federal law. Regulation Z, 12 CFR Section 226.23, grants rescission rights at foreclosure when requisite disclosures are absent. Forms H8 and H9 in the appendix must be provided to borrowers. If omitted, the statute of limitations does not toll, and rescission remains an available remedy. Despite statutory clarity, few invoke this federal remedy. Footnote: this section details federal rescission rights under TILA/Regulation Z and the persistent failure of borrowers to exercise those rights. Commercial law, trust law, taxation, and securities enforcement in mortgage and administrative proceedings Part 9 of 15. 9. Tax treatment of mortgage instruments as gift and estate transfers. Under IRC Section 2038 and Section 2514, mortgage instruments may be classified as donor-donee relationships subject to gift and estate taxation. IRS processing manuals and publication 950 describe unified tax credits applicable to such transfers, which are not income tax events but fall under Form 709 or 706 filings. Footnote: this section explains how mortgage transactions may trigger estate and gift tax implications rather than income tax reporting. Commercial law, trust law, taxation, and securities enforcement in mortgage and administrative proceedings Part 10 of 15. 10. Original issue discount filings and issuer identification. OID filings under 1099 OID require concurrent filing of Form 8281 to identify the issuer pursuant to 15 U.S.C. Section 78 CA 8. IRS Publication 1212 explicitly mandates this identification. Failure to include this form negates one's standing as issuer and may incur penalties. Footnote: this section underscores the necessity of Form 8281 in asserting issuer status in OID transactions. Commercial law, trust law, taxation, and securities enforcement in mortgage and administrative proceedings Part 11 of 15. 11. Redemption process and assessment of taxable credit use. All bills are treated as public debt instruments. The correct redemption process involves assessing the credit use via tax forms 1040, 1040 volts, 1096, and 1099 OID. Pay to the order of endorsements redirect the debt to the Department of Treasury, enabling STOF and balancing via IRS reconciliation. Most redemptions fail due to omission of proper assessment procedures. Footnote: this section explains the correct tax assessment and credit redemption procedures necessary for lawful offset of public debt. Commercial law, trust law, taxation, and Securities Enforcement in Mortgage and Administrative Proceedings Part 12 of 15. 12. Commercial Remedies and Private Enforcement. The Uniform Commercial Code allows for private enforcement of remedies through conditional acceptance, presentment challenge, and adverse claim filings. Courts operate as private administrative tribunals unless rebutted. Special appearance, refusal to contract, and demands for authority are required to strip presumed jurisdiction. Without these steps, judgments proceed in default. Footnote: this section reviews commercial remedies and procedural strategies for avoiding adhesion contracts and private administrative rulings. Commercial law, trust law, taxation, and securities enforcement in mortgage and administrative proceedings Part 13 of 15. 13. Securities intermediaries and claims on proceeds. UCC Section 8 to 505 mandates intermediaries to distribute proceeds to those asserting proper adverse claims. Failure to assert these claims renders the borrower's interest abandoned. Form 1099-A is typically filed post-foreclosure to memorialize this abandonment administratively. Footnote: this section emphasizes the statutory requirement to assert claims on proceeds and avoid administrative abandonment under 1099-A. Commercial law, trust law, taxation, and securities enforcement in mortgage and administrative proceedings Part 14 of 15. 14. Strategic use of title, trust, and insurance records. Abstracts of title, insurance carrier information, and errors and omissions policies provide evidentiary foundation for claims under RESPA, especially where undisclosed kickbacks or title defects exist. Under Title 12 Section 2607, claimants may request reconveyance or lien release based on errors or misrepresentations made at closing. Footnote: this section identifies administrative and evidentiary avenues to pursue reconveyance and challenge securitized loan defects. Commercial law, trust law, taxation, and securities enforcement in mortgage and administrative proceedings Part 15 of 15. 15. Final observations and remedy through knowledge. Redemption and remedy are available to all individuals functioning as secured parties and private bankers under Title 31. The problem is not the absence of remedy, but widespread ignorance. By reclaiming commercial understanding and invoking statutory rights, individuals can reclaim proprietary interests, enforce rescission, and block unlawful foreclosure or tax penalties. Footnote: this final section encourages the strategic reassertion of private rights through informed use of commercial statutes and tax procedures.